Hi there, this is Phil with PhilFX, and we've got another Maya tutorial today. Today we're going to talk about, really it's just a beginning class in working with UVs. Now, working with UVs is how you essentially map a two-dimensional texture onto a three-dimensional surface. And for anybody that's done this before or has worked with mapping UVs and creating them, I can honestly say that it's about as much fun as putting a stick in your eye. But it is a necessary evil. I think if you've seen any of the other tutorials people have done on YouTube, there's pretty much unanimous agreement on doing this type of task. But at the end of the day, it is something you really do need to learn. It's something you need to work with, and it's something you need to be comfortable with. So I'm just going to start with something very basic today. We've got a 3D object here. This is a ray gun. This actually came, if you have Modo, this is one of the standard objects that come with Modo. And I've taken it, actually exported it out of Modo as a OBJ and brought it into Maya. If this is something you do want to do, I'll point out right off the bat that this nozzle section has a couple of errors that you need to correct in terms of bad geometry. I'll leave that up to you to figure out where those are and fix them. But I brought this in, fixed the geometry, I deleted the colors that were initially placed on it, exported it back out, and then brought it back in again. So this gives us just a base subject so we can work with putting UVs on it. Today's tutorial, I'm at least going to talk about putting UVs on the chamber here. I've broken this up into four basic meshes. There's the chamber, there's the gun itself, there's the front nozzle, and there is the trigger. But I said today with this exercise we're really just going to focus on the chamber. So let's go ahead, and what I'm going to do is take these other objects and I'm just going to hide those. You select them all and do a Control H in Maya, and those will hide those objects. And so now we're just looking at the chamber here. And so what we want to be able to do is take this object and we want to create a set of UVs. And the UVs again are the mapping of how you take this three-dimensional object and you place a 2D texture onto it. So how do we get started? The way you get started to create UVs is basically you do a projection, and you project using a known shape onto the shape that you want to map UVs onto. And you do that based upon your projections, what is most similar to what you're trying to map to. Alright, so we have this cylindrical object that has two ends. And the way that I would do this is first let's go in and let's just kind of look at some of the tools that we have. So if I look at the Create UV menus, we can do what's called a planar mapping, a cylindrical, spherical, or an automatic mapping. So to get started actually, why don't we go in and let's just look with the UV texture editor what we might get if we did an automatic mapping. So the way that we do that is I go into my object and we select the faces that we want to map. In this case I've double clicked on the object, we've selected all the faces, and let's just do an automatic mapping and see what that looks like. So if we do that, here we have mapped this object into what is the UV space, and it has created a number of tiles that essentially take this three-dimensional object and map it into a two-dimensional space. And you can see how it's done it. It's essentially taken 6 planes and mapped those planes across this object. While this would work, it really is fairly unwieldy to work with, because what you're going to want to do then is take this texture map, this UV mapping, into something like Photoshop, and you want to then paint a surface onto here that's some kind of a picture. Because it's so broken up and quite unrecognizable, this really is not a solution that you'd want to work with, or a starting point that you'd want to work with. So that being the case, what I'm going to do here is we're just going to select all these UVs, and I'm just going to go ahead and delete them because that's not what I want to do. So what we're going to do is I'm going to go back to this object, and I want to go in and I'm going to select faces, and in this point, in this case, I want to select faces, and I'm just going to select this end. Alright, so I want to get just the faces on this end of the object, make sure that those are all selected. And then what we're going to do is I want to do a planar mapping. So let's look at our options that we have by clicking here, and I can do a planar mapping. Projection, you want to fit the projection. At this point in time, bounding box means is it will fit within the extent of the top and bottom and left and right of the edges. It's going to be a plane, and at this moment, if I don't change anything, it's going to do that on the x-axis. Well, the x-axis is really not the axis we want, right? The x-axis is over this way. We really want the z-axis. So I need to change that to z-axis, and we'll hit apply. And now that is going to create a UV set, and you can see it's highlighted the boundary, the outside boundary of that UV set. And if we go up here to our texture map, lo and behold, this creates actually a very nice UV set for this one end. Now granted, it's not the whole cylinder, but you don't have to do the whole thing at once. So what I want to do at this point in time is I'm just going to take and move this out of the way. We'll put this over here, and then I'm going to come back and I'm going to grab the other end. Alright, and at this point in time I'm going to take and we'll grab this end here. We're going to grab these faces. Same kind of thing. I'm going to do a planar mapping, and it'll be the z-axis again, and so we'll hit apply. Now one thing you'll notice, okay, where it has placed it, it's placed it just a little bit inside. That actually doesn't matter. If we go in and we look at our mapping, here we have the same kind of a circular shape, and we have UV, so let's put that over there. And then lastly but not least, what we have is we'll want to do the middle section. Well, the best way to select that middle section is to go in and over here say I'm going to select face, and I'll select those, which selects both of those faces. Then we can just easily go up to the edit menu and we can invert the selection. So if I invert the selection, that gives me the area that we haven't mapped yet. And for this, this is very cylindrical, so we don't want to do a planar mapping. We want to do a cylindrical mapping. So I can go in and we can look at the options for that. Actually, there's not many options for a cylindrical mapping, so I'm just going to go ahead and hit apply. And we can see we have this gizmo that comes up. Well, starters, if we look at how this looks in our UV space, this really isn't quite what we'd like to see. For starters, it's not wrapping around the way that the object is cylindrical. Second thing is it's not closed. So we need to close this. The way you do that is you grab this handle, and I'm just taking the mouse and pushing it up, so that closes it. The next thing is we need to rotate our mapping gizmo here. The way you do that is you go over here, and right here where you see there's that T. You see that right there? If you click on that T, now we get a gizmo that I can either use for rotating, for scaling, or for moving. If I click on this circle, now we see we have the ability to rotate that. And if I get my channel box up here, what we'll do is I need to take and we need to spin this up on the red axis. So I'm actually kind of grabbing all three at once, but we can see what we really want is we want to rotate X 90, and the rest of these we want to rotate by 0. So if I zoom this out, okay, now we can see we pretty much have this covered. Now, one thing I want to show real quick here, if I happen to drop by accident, let's just say I click out here, now all of a sudden my gizmo has been dropped, all right, and I want to get back to going, and I want to get my gizmo back because I didn't finish my projection. How do I do that? Well, I can click on here and I have my history of my object, and the gizmo comes back. Another way, sometimes it doesn't come back, and if it doesn't come back, you can easily do it where you go in and if you just hit the T, the letter T on your keyboard, that will bring this gizmo back. So, okay, so we've created UVs for both ends, and we've created a UV for the center. Now, what we need to do is you really want to have all of these UVs mapped to what's called the 1-1 space. And what you see shaded here is the 1-1 space. So I need to get all of these to fit inside here. And the way that I do that is I need to take and scale these. And the easiest way to do that is, first off, I want to take and I have, if I go in and I am in UV mode, and so I select a couple of these UVs. If I command right click and go to shell, you can see that it selects all those UVs right there. And then if I hit the W key, I can move those and get those out of the way. And then the next thing I want to do is I know that there is an issue here that has to do with UVs that are flipped and not flipped. And I went ahead and just made them so they would be flipped, but at the moment I'm not showing that. To display that, you go right up here where it says toggle shaded UV display, and notice how this one end cap is red and the other two are blue. The reason for that is the normals on the blue ones are pointing out, where the normals on this red one, and if you remember, that's the second one that I did. That was the second end cap, so it's over here. Those UVs are actually pointed in. They're pointed the wrong way. The normals are pointed the wrong way, and I need to flip this so that all of these are the same way. So the way you do that is really quite simple. I go in and I just say face, and I select all of these, and I go up here to polygons and I say flip. And when I flip that, now all of these are the same color. Next thing we need to do, like I said, we need to take and we need to map these so that these all can fit inside this space. So I'm going to take and I'm going to scale this, and I'm going to scale this one down a little bit. And I'm going to move this in, and I'm going to move this down. And it looks like I probably still need to scale this just a little bit. It's just a little bit inside. So we'll take and put that in. Okay. And that goes right there like that. So what I'm going to do is I want to scale both of these at the same time. Quickest way to do that is I'll put this in UV mode, select all the UVs, and I can just go in here and select both and scale both at the same time. Then I can take this and move it down, and we can see that I'm close. Actually, that probably will work pretty good. I may want to just shrink that just a little bit, and then I'm going to take this one and I'll move him in and take this one and move him in. And now we have a mapping of this chamber, and it's something we can easily work with. It should work very well, and this will allow us to paint textures on both the end caps and on the center. And I've already done something like this. What I've done is I've created some textures in Photoshop because I've gone through this. And so I just went on the web and Googled flame images, and I got some pictures of some flames. So I've got this image of these flames here, and I've got something off a hot rod, and I placed some text in here. And this is just a PNG file. So we've got this PNG file, and so what I can do is, let's go ahead and close this. And there's a way to use Photoshop. It's called a PSD network. I'm going to do that in another tutorial. But for right now, all I'm going to do is we're going to assign a material on here, and we're going to put those images that I created onto this. All right. So the way to do that, obviously, is let's go down here and get our favorite material. I'm just going to put a blend on here, and let's, for our color, we're going to get that from a file. All right, so I'm going to get a file, and the picture we're going to use right here is called Raygun 1 Shape PNG, and that's our picture. So I'm going to map that onto there. And if I go into this and hit 6, all right, we should see essentially that mapped onto there, which is in fact what we've got. Okay, now we've got a few issues, but essentially you can see that what we've done, if I go in here and open up the Hypershade network, and if we take this and we map it, we've brought in this picture. I've mapped it onto the blend as a color, and the mapping is following our UV mapping. So if we go up here to our created UV texture editor, you can see the picture that I brought in, and we can actually see some of the problems. Okay, if we look right here, we can see how the image is a little bit offset, and in fact I really wanted the flames to go on the other end. So we could fix that a number of ways. I could actually change my image, but actually, since I brought the image in, what I think I'm just going to do is I'm going to go in here, I'm going to select UVs. So I'm going to select these UVs, and I'm going to move them off, and then I'm going to select these UVs, and I'll move them right there. And I'll take these and I'll put these over like that. And if we look at our picture, lo and behold, look what happened. Okay, so I just put that picture on the other end just by moving that around. Now you can see what mapping does for you. Okay, the other problem that we have, if we look at the picture, we can see I've got a gap here. Okay, the picture doesn't map to the mapping. Okay, and so we have a problem with how the picture is mapping onto that surface. We have this gap right in here. So how can we solve that? Well, actually, again, we just go back to the UV mapping. This is what your UV mapping does for you. All right, so we can see the picture that I have, and you can see how these UVs actually come outside the picture. So the same kind of thing, I can go in and grab those UVs, and I can slide this in just a little bit so it covers the picture. And in fact, if I wanted to, I could even scale this just a touch so it comes inside. And if I do that, all right, so then let's go back to our picture, and lo and behold, that gap no longer exists. See, everything lines up and it has disappeared. So we have successfully mapped this texture onto the surface, okay? And just to take things one step further, if we look at our hypershade and we look into our network that we have for our device, if we go into blend, I have this thing called bump mapping. And bump mapping allows me to take an image and use that for bumping. And bumping is it's a poor man's way of applying a texture, a 3D kind of a texture to the image. Well, if we go up to here, look in Photoshop, I actually created a black and white. Essentially, all I did was just take this image and remove all the saturation from it, and created a black and white in Photoshop of the same image. Now this just has intensities that follow a grayscale, and I can use this for bumping. Okay. So if we take this image and bring it in, I can use that image for a bump map. So all I need to do is go in here and click on this and say we want a file. Is our bump map, and the bump value comes from that file. So I go over here, and this is that file, bump PNG. So I bring that in and I apply it. And now if we go in and if I look at my object and we zoom in particular on this end, look what that does. See what that bump map does? Okay, so we can see that we have successfully applied a bump that follows the picture and applied it to that surface, such that when that renders out, it gives a three-dimensional texture. Now the thing about bump mapping is it really doesn't create displacements, and we know it doesn't create displacements because if I go in, I hit 3 and I do smoothing, if you look at this edge right here, you can see that nothing sticks out. So we actually haven't created geometry. So bumping is actually just kind of a fake, and why you want to do it though is because it provides you with a very rapid rendering way of getting 3D without having to go through and create displacements. Now I could create a displacement map with this. The downside of doing that and creating a displacement map is it does increase the render time, and sometimes depending upon what you're doing, it'll increase it significantly. So hopefully this will help you at least getting started. Working with UVs is complicated, takes a while. There's numerous tools. I'm going to go through some of the other tools. I'm going to do another quick tutorial on using the nozzle, because the nozzle is a little more difficult and there's a few more tools that you need to do. But this at least should get you started with working with basic simple geometries. So thanks a lot. Catch you later.